Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. Once again, the man most worthy of Oyashiro-sama's curse fell victim on the night of the Meakashi festival, so the fuss over Oyashiro-sama's curse rose up again. Until then, Oyashiro-sama wasn't considered very important, at least in the world of us kids. It was just the name of the object of worship in the shrine. Nothing more than that. I'd seen boys peeing on the archway, and I once stuck my hand into the offertory box. The existence of a god didn't matter much to us, but after 2 consecutive occurrences, the kids no longer doubted the existence of the curse. We were all shaking in fear of Oyashiro-sama. Everybody suddenly became interested in the old stories about him too. We quietly listened to the musty old stories the elders had to tell, and we started genuinely believing in the tales of Oyashiro-sama's miracles, which any of us would have laughed away before. Oyashiro-sama's rules were awfully simple and clear. Enemies treading into Hinamizawa will be cursed. Villagers leaving the village will be cursed. What defined the village was terribly vague. Were we never allowed to leave Hinamizawa village? Was going to Okonomiya still safe? Was a single step enough to be out? Was a 3-day, 2-night hot spring trip still safe? We kids tried to draw a line. It was decided in the end that if you had a house in Hinamizawa or Okonomiya, you were safe, and it was okay to go on trips if you had a house in either area. I know it's weird, but those rules were made up by kids, after all. I mean, technically aren't all rules. I mean, even as people that are older, it's not really any much of a different rationale. After all, didn't early Christianity have a huge, convention 300 years after the death of Christ to decide what counts as canon books of the Bible? Plus you have the divisions of Catholicism, Orthodox, and Protestant, and all of them have, well, a lot of disagreements as well. Heck, I would say many Christians don't even identify with any of the denominations of, like, even if you're a Protestant, you don't even identify with any of the denominations of the various Protestant sects. I myself was raised as an apostolic. Imagine if you did a Dragon Ball Z fusion of a Southern Baptist and a Catholic. All 3 groups involved, by the way, would be offended. Apostolics, Catholics, and Baptists would all be offended at that comparison. Then again, I was also the only white guy growing up in an all-black church. Well, me and my mom were the only white people. So, it was interesting with people speaking in tongues and very long-winded services of like 3 hours. And it was... Though, honestly, I have my own personal misgivings with the pastor of that church, as well as the way they did things about stuff. So, in general, I think a lot of people, or at least myself anyway, simply go with, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, I read the Bible, and I try to be a good person. But at the end of the day, what I decide, what I do is, based off logic and compassion. I just think about things I think all things should be able to be discussed in polite, civil conversation. And nothing should be considered an absolute. And in general, I believe in a whole let live sort of philosophy where I tend to just have a mellow temperament and I tend to not really get offended by anything, and I tend to just try to leave people alone as long as I'm left alone. And I just try to treat everyone with kindness. I just live life. But I am saying that largely the same logic that they're going off here is literally, after all, in all religions, heck, and even things that aren't religious at all. Heck, take the Talmud with the Jewish people. That was a large group of rabbis who came together to try to decide where you drew the line on various religious rules, like what counts. I mean, that's largely the same thing as this. It's a bunch of people coming together, trying to discuss, clarification to certain things. It's not like those things written in those books are, like the Talmud, are direct from God. They're the same as a pastor or even various preachers throughout Christianity, even a couple hundred years ago. There was a John Calvin, if I remember right. I really don't look into that stuff very often, but it's just a person. I mean, there's just people coming up with rules, discussing things. I guess the main thing I'm trying to say here is this. Whether it was adults actually in charge of the village, or just the kids discussing it, I see no reason why Ushiro-sama would favor one group over the other. And I agree with these rules. That, as long as you have a house in either Okonomiya or Hinamizawa, it's fine. And as long as you don't decide that you want to leave the village or be against it or betray it, and now you're allowed to leave on visits and trips or business, but you have to have an intention of having a home there and wanting to be, still involved in the village, in the area. However, because after all, Okonomiya is really still part of Hinamizawa, because it's just outer Hinamizawa, where all the big buildings are, and where the tourists come. Kind of like the outer sanctuary and the inner sanctuary. Yes, I make a comparison to the old Jewish temples. But the other thing is this. I would also say that if you're taken away from Hinamizawa or Okonomiya against your will, I don't think it counts. Because you didn't make the choice. Other than that, of course, anything that's disrespectful to Oyoshiro-sama or certain moral rules, obviously certain things like disrespecting the shrine or not keeping the Watanagashi cotton drifting festival sacred or committing murder. Even if you feel it's justified. Or killing the priestess, especially. But one of those just results in a small curse that kills the person involved. The other one kills everyone in the entire area. According to those rules, I'd be cursed since I lived in a boarding school in such a remote area. No, I would say you're not cursed, because one, you still wanted to have a home there. Two, you didn't want to leave. You're forced. And finally is this. You think you'd be cursed because you're living in a remote school, but here's the problem. The person in charge of the village forced you to do it. If anything, Oryu, the leader of the Sonozaki household, should be the one cursed because she's the one who made the choice to say that you had to leave Hinamizawa, not you. You weren't the one who made the decision. So there's no reason you should be cursed. But there is a reason that Oryu's Sonozaki and possibly even your parents should be cursed. I couldn't say it out loud because I felt embarrassed, but in fact I was a little scared of the curse. Yeah, it happened again the year after. It sure is scary when it happens 2 years in a row. I still believe in Oyashiro-sama's power. Shion-chan, what are you saying? Don't you know? No? About what? Oh right, you went to that school before it happened. That's why you don't know. Uncle Yoshiro grimaced as if he said too much, as though he had mentioned something I shouldn't know about. What is it? Can't leave me hanging like that. Well, I think you're mature enough now. Hey, if you think my body looks underdeveloped, you should see an eye doctor. Either that or you're a pedo. Humph. Okay, I'll talk. It happened again the year after that. What happened? What are you talking about? Tick. When I was very little, I always had this tick before I heard something bad. It was like a gnome who lived inside me was giving me a warning. Like he was poking me with a small needle. When I felt this tick before my parents called me, they'd always either chide me or tell me something bad. So I used to run away when I felt it, but my senses seemed to have grown dull over the years, even though my gnome poked at me. I just sat there. It happened? Again, the year after the death of the Hojos. Last year, in other words. Did it happen on the day of the Watanagashi? Again. 3 years in a row? That's right. You know there's a shrine in Hinamizawa, the Furude Shrine. The priest suddenly died on the night of the festival. They said that the cause of death was an unknown illness, and the same night his wife threw herself into the swamp. There was a big uproar. The mayor even had to hold an emergency meeting. I don't think that bit about the illness is true, but his death was very sudden. The priest was busy preparing for the festival and he'd gotten sick around that time, so I guess he died of a heart attack or something. But it's just crazy that somebody died on the day of the Watanagashi again. It's the third time in a row. It's unbelievable that so many people have died on the exact same day. The coroner didn't find anything unusual about the cause of death, so nobody suspected that anything was wrong. But you're right, the whole situation is abnormal. Only the people who were likely to be cursed died on the day of the festival. There must be something behind this. Whether it's a conspiracy or curse, that has to be. I decided to meet up with Mion at the library near Okonomiya train station. It's not that I didn't trust Mion, but I don't want to let her know where I live. Not many people use this library, so I won't see anyone from Hinamizawa here. It's very convenient for meeting someone in secret. Same place we took Keiichi. After we discussed my life plan and work schedule, we moved to small talk. I have been away from this town for years. Things have changed. I asked Mion about those changes in detail in order to fill in the gaps. While talking about various things, I brought up what Uncle Yoshiro had told me about Oyashiro-sama's curse. Even before I left town, the curse had already struck twice. The dismemberment murder on the first year left quite an impact. And the year after, the pro-dam activist couple fell off the cliff on the day the villagers were enjoying their first Watanagashi festival since the dam project was indefinitely frozen. This one also left quite the impact. Their evil construction site manager was punished the next year. The traitor to the village met the same fate. If it had happened only once, people would have concluded it was just a bizarre coincidence. But when it happened 2 years in a row, people were far more likely to believe it was a curse. I know up to that part, and after I left town, the curse struck again for the third time. People talked about the curse more intensely than ever before, both in Hinamizawa and Okonomiya. I have to rethink this. Oyashiro-sama's curse has drastically gained credibility while I was away. It was still unclear with the first two incidents, but after it continued for 3 years straight, people's doubts changed to convictions. Even though the priest who died on the 3rd year was an enemy of the villagers, the fact that the people in Mizawa didn't care for him much added even more credibility to the idea. Wasn't the priest hated by a few? Especially by the committee members? Yeah, they criticized him for being a fence-sitter. Towards the end of the damn conflict, the protesters were all taking aggressive stances, so they didn't like how soft he was being. The priest had looked strict and scary. The way he spoke was always so formal, but in reality he was very warm and reserved. Maybe it was because he was a son-in-law, having married into his family. I'm sure the priest and his personality were the perfect fit for managing the shrine that was used for summer festivals and village meetings, but that gathering spot-style atmosphere of the shrine changed completely when the dam war broke out, and it became the headquarters of the Onikafushi Guardians. Prior to the dam protests, hardly anyone worshipped Oyashiro-sama. Of course, the devout elders paid worship to him, but the average person treated our god like how you treat fortune-telling. Once the dam protest began, Oyashiro-sama was suddenly hauled out as a symbol of the village's resistance, tracing the Oyashiro-sama faith back to its roots. It was an exclusive, elitist faith that believed its members were descended from a holy ancestor, different from the masses at the foot of the mountain, and that those tainted masses should never come near the village. Of course, such self-centered ideology wasn't acceptable anymore in peaceful, post-war Japan, so this doctrine was abandoned over time. Still, the idea remained, and they trudged it back up to fan the flames of nationalism and unite the town against the dam project. With the revival of those ideas, things only grew more radical by the day, and it didn't take very long for Onikafushi Guardians to become aggressive. After that, we were in a state of war. 100 million burning as one. Kill the white savages. Want not but victory. Adults and kids both were gnawing at the bit, avid to repel the foreign invaders. Describing it like that makes it sound kind of awful, like a reminder of the dark times of wartime Japan. But like I said before, for us kids, it felt less like a war and more like a village-wide festival. Yet despite calling it a festival, dissenters were treated coldly. Their heartlessness lived up to the expression wartime regime. The Hojo couple who voiced their acceptance of the dam project in the midst of that atmosphere were truly brave. Then, on the 2nd year of the curse, they died in an accident, and everyone believed it was Oyashiro-sama's curse, without question. So they were branded traitors and enemies of the village. The Hojo couple faced worse than just being ostracized as traitors. Everyone gave them the cold shoulder and talked behind their backs. The only person who didn't treat them badly was the priest. While the priest never objected to the anti-dam movement, he also never objected to the Hojo couple's advocacy for accepting the government's eviction and restitution to rebuild new lives. Those unforgivable Hojos became a slogan as the three families, especially the Sonozakis, united the village by turning them into scapegoats. So they must have found it very shameful to have a fellow member of the three families approve of that, especially when it became the priests of the shrine that became a symbol for the damn protests. It's like, oh no, you're not joining in and lynching and bullying and possibly even murdering people for disagreeing. Well, that makes you a bad person, I guess. You failed to lynch the people we hate, so you're bad, I guess. Doesn't that sound like the stuff where people are like going after Kirsch, the VTuber, recently? Where everyone's trying to cancel her for just having, I don't know, the audacity to speak out about, like, her opinion and the truth? Essential figures in Himizawa, the three families were the backbones of the Onikafushi Guardians, so difference of opinion was undesirable. And the priest was never accused of anything, but secretly people whispered that he was a heretic, and that he was unfit to serve as Oyashiro-sama's priest, that Oyashiro-sama's curse would soon strike him down, along with other rumors. Don't you think that the priest was more mature than those around him? He was pretty cool, managing to keep his head and remain neutral while everyone around him grew fervent. I thought Mion would share my opinion when I chimed back in. So when Mion gave me a forced smile and didn't agree with me, I was taken by surprise.